This is Tim Phillips, Chief Executive Officer at Phillips & Company Advisors. Our mission is to improve your life through thoughtful, innovative advice. And to do that, we want to provide you great content that helps educate you on some of the nuances of investing. A lot of times investing is counterintuitive, and to help explain some of these concepts, we've asked our friend and soon-to-be best-selling author, Morgan Housel, to share a few stories with you. Morgan, let me throw it over to you.
Thanks so much, Tim. Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Housel, and as always, I'm really excited and honored to get to do these videos for Phillips & Company. And I want to tell you a short story about a topic that I think is so important in investing, which is that personal finance is more personal than it is finance. Let me show you what I mean. This right here, this guy is a world-class athlete. He's one of the best in the world at what he does. This guy right here is also a world-class athlete. He's one of the best in the world at what he does. They're both some of the best in the world at what they do. They're both in incredible physical shape, and they're both professional athletes. But that's where the similarities end, of course. Their training regimens are totally different. Their diets are completely different. Their physical goals are almost the polar opposite of one another, and what works for one would be disastrous for the other. This is even true if we're talking about the same person, the same athlete. Michael Jordan once said that he had to reconstruct his body when he went from basketball to baseball, back to basketball. Because baseball favored strong arms and a strong chest, and basketball required a leaner figure with stronger core and legs. And of course, that all makes perfect sense to everyone. No one criticizes marathon runners for doing things completely differently than powerlifters, despite the fact that they are both athletes. ESPN covers sports, but no anchor pretends that golf and mixed martial arts are remotely similar to one another, even though they're both sports. But when people use the common label investors, that same logic starts to break down. And suddenly you have investors, you start judging one another, even if they are playing very different games with different goals. Someone recently asked me how my investment views have changed in the last decade, and it was actually easy for me to answer. I said, I am less judgmental about how other people invest than I used to be. It's so easy to just lump everyone in a single category called investors and view them as playing the same game called markets. But people play wildly different games with their money, and they have different goals. And the thing is, if you view investing as a single game, then you think that every deviation from that game's rules or strategies or skills is wrong. And then you view people doing it differently than you, and maybe that drives you crazy because it looks like they're doing something wrong. But most of the time in that situation, you are just the equivalent of a marathon runner yelling at a powerlifter. A big problem in investing is that we treat it like it's math, where 2 + 2 = 4 for everyone, you and me and everyone. There's only one right answer. But I think it's actually something closer to sports, where equally smart and talented people do things completely differently, depending on what game they're playing. And so much of what we consider investing debates and disagreements are actually just people playing different games who are unintentionally talking over one another. Because what you want from money and investing might not be what I want. And what's fun to you might be miserable to me. Your family is different from mine. Your job is different from mine. You have different life experiences than I do. You have different role models, different risk tolerances, goals, social ambitions, work-life balance. It goes on and on and on. Everyone is different. So of course we don't always want or agree on what's the best thing to do with our money. And there's no world in which we should. And if we're different people who want different things, then the investing skills that we might need could be completely different from one another. And information that is relevant to you might be a waste of time for me. But it's rarely parsed that way in the media, right? I mean, 19-year-old day traders buy Apple stock, and college endowments with a century-long time horizon also buy Apple stock. But the headline in the media usually says something like, is Apple stock undervalued? And then you see why so many investing debates are a waste of time. I mean, 20-year-olds who are trying to learn about markets have different desires than 48-year-olds who are saving from their kids' college. 97-year-old Charlie Munger is not that interested in new technology as young investors because he's 97 years old. And I think that's fine. It's perfectly normal and unavoidable. And even if we try to find obvious common denominators, like all investors want to make money, you get tripped up by assuming that other people want what you do. Daniel Kahneman, who is a psychologist who won the Nobel Prize in economics, he once told his financial advisor that he had no desire to become richer. He had no desire to make more money. He just wanted to maintain his current lifestyle for the rest of his life. And the financial advisor told him, quote, "I can't work with you." She fired him. She rejected him. Kahneman once told me in an interview, he said, quote, "She was very puzzled in the context of someone coming to get financial advice and not trying to get richer." And I'm not sure I'm all that unusual. Many people retired on pensions are perfectly satisfied with it, and they are not desperate to have more. So here again, everyone is different. So let me tell you one of the most important pieces of investment advice that I know of. It's this: figure out what game you're playing and then play it, and only it. So few investors actually do this. Maybe they have a vague idea of their game, but they haven't clearly defined it. And when they don't know what game they're playing, they're at risk of taking their cues and taking advice from people who are playing a different game, which can lead to risks that they didn't intend and outcomes that they never imagined. Let me show you an example of this that impacted so many investors. Amazon stock rose about 40-fold from 1997 to 1999. That, of course, was just incredible. And at that price, the company was valued at $30 billion, which was insane given where the company was. Because at the time, it was still a tiny little online bookstore that was losing money every month with almost no prospects of turning that around anytime soon. So then why was Amazon worth $30 billion in 1999? Well, partly that was because people were just giddy during the 90s, but I think there are other and more important reasons for this. Few people actually thought that Amazon was worth $30 billion in 1999. The stock was priced at that level because day traders were just having their fun. They were the ones who were pushing the price up on a daily basis. We're just these day traders who were going back and forth with one another. But if you were a long-term investor in 1999, then Amazon at $130 a share was the only price available to buy. And many people were buying it at that price. So you, the long-term investor, you may have looked around and said to yourself, wow, maybe these other investors know something that I don't. So maybe you went along with it. And you even felt smart about it. What you may not have realized is that the day traders who were setting the marginal price of the stock were playing a different game than you were. $130 a share, $30 billion, that was reasonable. It was a reasonable price to pay for the day traders because they planned on selling the stock the next day when its price would probably be higher. But $130 a share was probably really challenging for you, the long-term investor, because you planned on holding those shares for the long run. So once the day traders left and shares fell 90% from 2000 to 2002, as they did, you, the long-term investor, may have felt like you got burned. The day traders were gone. Their game was over. They packed up and went somewhere else. It was the long-term investors who may have gotten tied up emotionally in the games of those traders who took the biggest hit. And that's why so many long-term investors got burned during the dot-com bubble. They were taking their cues from short-term investors who were playing a different game than they were. Now, the game that you're playing is not something that I can tell you or decide for you because everyone is different. Different ages and risk tolerances, different life experiences. A huge part of the value of a good financial advisor is defining this for you, helping you come to that decision. But I'll tell you my game because maybe that will help define what I'm talking about. And I wrote this down years ago. My game is, I am a passive investor, optimistic in the world's ability to generate real economic growth. And I'm confident that over the next 30 years, that growth will accrue to my investments. That's it. That's my game. And once I define that game that I'm playing, so much of what goes on in the investing world suddenly doesn't seem that relevant to me. Like daily market commentary about what the market's doing, quirky details about the market's valuation, whether this stock or that stock is overvalued, that information might be very relevant to other people, but it's not relevant to me. And paying attention to it could actually be detrimental to achieving my goals and my game. So I will leave you by emphasizing how important it is to think about who you are. Not what other people are saying about the stock market, but what your own personal goals are, what your own risk tolerance is, what kind of investing strategy fits your personality, your own unique view of the world, even if other people who are just as smart as you might disagree with it. They might be playing a different game than you are. As Michael Jordan said, quote, "That's how I played the game. If you don't want to play it that way, don't play that way." Thank you very much.